Hello YouTube and welcome back to Used and Reviewed. In this video I want to take you through the differences between the PS4 and the next gen PlayStation 5, or at least what we know so far. It may be a little bit technical in places, but do stick around as it will be an interesting video and be a lot more entertaining than watching my live subscriber count. So back in April 2019, Mark Cerny carried out an interview with Wired where he effectively launched the first details of the PlayStation 5. The interview went against the grain of a typical big bang announcement at a major event such as E3, but nevertheless it had still quite the impact on the industry. Quite simply, the PlayStation 5 appears to be the most ambitious console to date. Let's jump straight into that comparison, starting with the heart of the console, the CPU and GPU. The PS4 launched back in November 2013 with a combined AMD Jaguar CPU and GPU, 8 cores with a CPU frequency of 1.6 GHz and a GPU frequency of 800 MHz. The GPU had a peak performance of 1.84 teraflops. Now I said this was a little bit technical, but essentially the teraflops number gives us a good gauge as to how powerful the PS4 is and what level of performance we should see from the PlayStation 5. The PlayStation 4 also has a secondary custom ARM processor that manages uploads and downloads in the background. Sony have confirmed that the PlayStation 5 will incorporate AMD's latest 3rd gen Ryzen Zen 2 CPU. Now this might not mean a lot to some people, but essentially AMD has just launched this range of processors which utilise a new 7nm chipset. The 7nm element relates to the size of the chipset, which by being smaller than previous processors means lower cost of manufacturing and more efficient performance, as AMD can fit more cores onto the chipset, giving off less heat. All very important for a console design. The PS5 will have 8 cores, but as yet we do not know at what frequency. Whilst we also don't know the exact frequency of the GPU, we do know that it will be based on AMD's recently launched Navi graphics cards and will also have support for ray tracing. If you do not know what ray tracing is, or what effect it will have on your games, I suggest you go and have a look at a few videos online. Ray tracing is all about how light realistically reflects off objects, and it could be a real game changer for next gen consoles. And whilst we're on the subject of graphics, let's talk resolution. The original PS4 struggled to maintain 1080p at 60 frames per second, and many games either ran at 30 frames per second or the resolution was lowered to maintain performance. The PlayStation 5's targeted resolution is 4K at 60 frames per second. Leaked benchmarks suggest PS5 is more powerful than an Nvidia RTX 2070 graphics card, but not quite as powerful as an RTX 2080. Given that the RTX 2080 struggles to maintain 4K at 60 frames per second, I have reservations the PS5 will consistently hit this without some form of software trick, as we saw with the PS4 Pro's checkerboarding. Or maybe they'll just use a bit of witchcraft. And by the way, the RTX 2080 is a £600 to £700 graphics card. There has also been suggestion of the PS5 being able to output at 8K. If you're thinking of playing PS5 games running at 8K, well, you can forget it. What is more likely is that the PS5 will have an HDMI 2.1 port, which theoretically supports 8K at 60 frames per second. It also supports 4K at 120 frames per second. Maybe there'll be some upscaling for 8K output, or maybe Mark Cerny will be boiling a few more toads in that cauldron. Either way, we can expect huge performance boosts versus the PlayStation 4. There are rumours that the combined CPU and GPU we just discussed will provide a peak performance of between 13 and 14 teraflops. To put that in context, this is nearly 8 times more powerful than the PlayStation 4. So the original PS4 launched with 8GB of GDDR5 RAM, which at the time seemed more than enough for console gaming, although this was also paired with a tiny 256MB for background tasks, which was certainly inadequate from the get-go. As graphics have been pushed to high resolutions at more frames per second, a large jump in RAM on the PS5 would be very welcome. 16GB GDDR6 would be a minimum, and there have been some suggestions that we could see up to 24GB of RAM on the PS5, coupled with 4GB for the operating system and the user interface. At this level, we should see a very slick performance across gaming and general multimedia usage. The original PS4 launched with a 500GB, 5400 RPM hard drive. I thought at the time this was both too small and too slow for next-gen gaming, and it's certainly starting to prove that way considering games like Red Dead Redemption 2 are taking up nearly 100GB of space. Fortunately, the hard drive was easily replaceable, and Sony even allowed external hard drives to be used further down the line. In terms of the PS5, this part of the console may well prove to be just as important as the CPU and GPU performance we mentioned earlier. Mark Cerny has confirmed that the PS5 will use an SSD for storage. Now this isn't any old SSD. Cerny claims the PS5 SSD will have a raw bandwidth higher than any SSD available on PC. We don't know if this is using the new PCI Express 4.0 connection, but given that those types of SSDs are hitting 5,000 megabytes per second and cost around £200 to £250, it's difficult to see what Cerny has up his sleeve. To put this into context, this kind of speed is 43 times faster than the PS4 stock hard drive, which hits around 116 megabytes per second. If Sony can pull this off, then just wow. To demonstrate this in action, footage has emerged of Spider-Man running on a PS4 Pro versus the next-gen PS5. In this demo, there was a fast travel sequence between areas in the game which took just over 8 seconds on the PS4 Pro, but only 0.8 seconds on the PS5, which is an unbelievable 10 times faster. In the Wired interview, it was also suggested that the stock PS4 took around 15 seconds, which would mean the PS5 performance was 19 times faster than the original PS4. Not only will the load times of games improve massively with an SSD, but the demo also showed the speed at which in-game performance improved with a faster camera following Spidey around the city. All of this is great, but I have a big concern with A, the cost of an SSD in the PS5, B, the size of the SSD, given what we mentioned about game install sizes, and C, how possible it will be to expand the storage as we already can do on the PlayStation 4. The DualShock controller is a staple of the PlayStation brand, and personally I can't see Sony deviating too far away from the design and the style of the existing DualShock 4. The DualShock 4 received a huge facelift versus the DualShock 3, with added features such as the touchpad, LED lights, physical trigger buttons, share and option buttons, and who could forget those brilliant new thumbsticks. No real information is available on the controller for the PS5 yet. However, we have seen some rumours suggesting that the controller will have an inbuilt LCD screen. This photo proved to be a fake, but it does raise questions as to how feasible this would be. Yes, it would have an impact on battery life, but it could open up a whole new level of gaming possibilities. As time moves on, I'll be really interested to see where Sony go with the controller design and what additional features they may introduce. The big one. The only way to gain some type of backwards compatibility on the PS4 is to use Sony's PS Now service. See, the problem was that the PS3 hardware was so unique that replicating in any type of hardware form on the PS4 was near on impossible. The PS5 is another matter. Sony have confirmed full backwards compatibility with the PlayStation 4. From day one, you should have no issues inserting a PS4 disc into the PS5 and away you go. You see, as both the PS4 and the PS5 will be based on similar architecture, i.e. that AMD APU, then the process of the next gen console emulating its predecessor is much more simpler. Knowing that your old games will work on the next gen console will surely mean people will jump in across earlier in the life cycle. Whilst on the subject of backwards compatibility, Sony has also confirmed that the next gen console will have full PSVR support. I also wouldn't be surprised to see some form of upgrade or new VR capabilities on the PS5. The PS4 shipped with a Blu-ray drive, and I fully expect this to be the case with the PS5, especially as we will need some way to play those last gen games. I also expect the PS5 to either have a Ultra HD drive or at least VDXL capability. That is the ability to read Blu-ray discs over 100 GB. Given that the PS4 version of Red Dead Redemption 2 came on 2 discs, you can see why we now need to have access to large capacity media on the next gen console. The PS4 had both optical output for audio as well as HDMI for sending audio to your TV. It could be combined with a nice 7.1 surround system or be used with a headset through the DualShock 4 controller. Mark Cerny suggested that PS5 will have hardware accelerated 3D audio capability, which will be dramatically different to the audio seen on previous gen. He suggests that the audio will make you feel more immersed in the game as sounds come at you from above, from behind and from the side. I think that the best way you'll get this experience will be using a dedicated headset, but I am intrigued with how the audio will work on a normal TV setup. So how much will the PlayStation 5 cost? Well, when you consider the launch price of the PS4 was $399 or £349 in the UK, I would suggest that this would be the absolute minimum that the PlayStation 5 will actually retail at. Considering the hardware and technology that we just talked about, that fast SSD, it would appear that we would look at a price northwards of $400, maybe right up to the $500 mark. Mark Cerny also suggested that the PlayStation 5 will be at a price that does appeal to gamers in light of its advanced feature set. The PlayStation 4 launched in November of 2013, and I can see the PlayStation 5 launching at a similar period in 2020. What we don't know is the exact date and whether or not it will be a worldwide launch or region by region. Any further details on the PS5 are not available at the moment, so taking all this into consideration, I'm definitely getting a PS5 on launch date. So make sure you subscribe for future content, or at least just to make this a little bit more interesting. Hit that bell notification, give the video a thumbs up, and let me know if you think the PS5 will be a good upgrade. And I will see you guys in the next video.